Hello, everyone. A warm welcome to our Around the Bonfire podcast. I am joined today by my co-hosts Adam, Andy, and our guest today, Lawrence. Lawrence, it's great to have you here, and I'm looking forward to our conversation. So enjoy your stay at the bonfire today.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Glad to have you, Lawrence. Welcome back.
Yeah, welcome here.
It's a warm welcome.
Yeah, we tried to have Lawrence on a few weeks back, but there were just so many technical difficulties that we just decided to have him on again.
And we'll probably have him more in the future as well. He's a good special friend of ours.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Man.
Yeah.
So how's your guys' quarantine going?
It's going great.
Like anything new that you guys had to start doing, or maybe anything new that you've been trying since it happened? May be related to quarantine or just personal endeavors that you would have eventually acted upon anyways.
Well, this has nothing to do with COVID or quarantine at all, but I'm currently studying to pass the 3 CSET subtests for mathematics needed to get my teacher's credential.
Wow.
So that's what I've been working on. I basically spent the whole day studying today.
And so how much, what is that testing you on exactly? What material are you going to be tested on?
Well, subtest 1 is algebra 1, 2, and linear algebra, and number theory. Subtest 2 is geometry, probability, and statistics, and subtest 3 is calculus and trigonometry.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Are there any of them that you feel like it's been a while, or all of them, or what do you think you have to study the most?
Well, I'm definitely going to have to study calculus the most because that's probably the one I'm need the most brushing up on, but only by a little bit more. Because I feel like the hardest one for me is going to be subtest 2, actually. That's the probability and statistics one.
Dang.
Mm-hmm.
Stats,
I remember,
man.
I remember having a lot of trouble in my stats class. So that's going to be really difficult for me to brush up on everything.
Do they let you use a graphing calculator?
Only on subtest 2, but subtest 1 and 3, no calculators.
Wow.
So I'm nervous for all of them. They're all hard. I took a practice exam for subtest 1 Monday and Tuesday and failed both, and then I took another one today and I got 86%. But It seemed the one I took today felt easier because the questions felt easier, not because I've improved that much or anything. But
yeah, you could tell.
There's 2 factors I feel weighing against as far as difficulty goes, and it's how much I have to brush up on the information because of how long ago the last time I used it was. And then 2 is the actual difficulty of the type of math you use. That's why it's hard for me to pick which one's going to be the hardest, because subtest 1 is stuff I haven't done in a really long time, but not as complex math. Subtest 2 is I did it a medium amount of time ago, and it's a medium amount of complexity. And then subtest 3 is I did it the most recent, but it's also the most complex type of math. So in a way, they're almost all even.
I see.
Wow.
So you take that test, and then you just have your credential then, or how, what's the process after that?
Oh, no. It's a long process.
Yeah.
So after I pass the test, I have to enroll in a credential program, and I also need to acquire like a certain amount of hours inside a classroom, which for that I'm hoping to get waived because of my experience in City or AmeriCorps. Because I spent a lot of time in classrooms in there. But it's actually a long process, but I'm hoping to have all the prerequisites done before next year so I could do the credential program starting 2021, and then I will graduate with my teacher's credential in 2022.
Epic. Just in time to find a job.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hopefully the virus will be gone by then.
That's what I'm hoping to.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
that's the pipeline for my next 2 years.
Yeah, that's so awesome, though.
Wow.
Yeah, getting into education.
Yeah. I think just over the past year I'm realizing like how much I enjoy learning and how much I enjoy sharing my passion for learning, to how much I enjoy working with students and just all the things that kind of go alongside teaching. Like I really want to start a couple on-campus clubs that I want to run. I want to coach volleyball, and so just a couple like side things that go with it. So it all kind of just came together. Like it made sense for me to be a teacher. Also, another reason was because as a teacher, you get summer breaks, you get winter breaks, you get Thanksgiving break, and a small spring break as well. So you get a lot of time off as a teacher, and I want a job where I would have time off so I could work on my own entrepreneurship endeavors and do kind of things on the side. So I'm excited to like teach through the school year, but then over summer work on my own stuff. So
Wow.
Yeah.
let's see what happens.
Yeah, that's so exciting.
It's a cool schedule. It's like no other job like that in the world, probably. I mean, it would be cool to kind of figure out what other ones might be.
I think it's the only one. I can't think of it.
It's the only one.
Yeah.
Oh, what
It's
about
the
how
only
about
one what?
Football players, sports athletes?
Oh,
yeah, they have an off
That's
season.
They get like.
But I figured it's a lot easier for me to become a teacher than it is.
Nah, yes,
to
I've
become a
seen
sports
you play volleyball.
Oh, thanks, Andy.
Just
The
go
only
apply.
thing is there is no professional volleyball in the United
Really?
States. Yeah.
What? There's no Olympics?
Yeah, so after
Wow.
college, really the only next thing is Olympics, which is why a lot of like Olympic volleyball players come from like big NCAA college schools. However,
Wow.
there is professional volleyball in other countries, like Italy, France, Poland, Germany, Russia, South Korea, China, Japan. They all have professional volleyball. Brazil. And so if you're if you want to pursue volleyball as an athlete for a career, what most volleyball players do is they play on teams in other countries for 3 years, and then every 4 years is the Olympics, and then so they just go back to the U.S., play for the U.S. national team, and then once the Olympics are over, you could play with your professional team again in whatever country you're playing in. So I know it's very common for a lot of recently collegiate players and Olympic volleyball players that play for teams in Russia, Italy, Brazil, China, and Japan, those types of countries. So it is possible to become a professional volleyball athlete, just not in the U.S.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Dang.
Yeah. Man, so Adam, what's like the highest level volleyball athlete you've played against? I think I remember you telling me you've played against some pretty tough people.
Oh no, just collegiate. I've just played against college people. I've never played against. Well, okay, for fun, I've played with professional AVP players, which is beach volleyball. So on the sand, I've played just for fun with a couple professional beach volleyball players. But as far as like, yeah, I've never played like club or anything.
So what was it like when you played against the pros? Like you were just playing for fun. Like,
Oh yeah,
were they incredibly?
It's definitely humbling. Like they're really good. They're super nice too, though. That's it's volleyball is such an, especially beach volleyball. It definitely has its own culture, and I think coming from Southern California, I'm just so grateful and privileged to be around the beach volleyball culture all the time. I've met a couple famous beach volleyball players and gotten to hit with them and do drills down in Encinitas, and that's where a lot of really good volleyball players come from.
Encinitas?
Yeah, and so Southern California is kind of just the hub of U.S. beach volleyball, and so it's just cool being from this area, and you never know who you're going to run into, but yeah, I've never played seriously against them. That would be a dream come true, but I'm not quite on their level.
Oh man.
Yeah, I know California is also, like Southern California is also the like kind of like a central or epicenter for skateboarding too, and I'm not sure.
Wait,
oh,
what's
sorry.
that? Or can you talk? Are you far from the mic?
Yeah, the California is also like an epicenter for skateboarding too.
Oh, really? Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
There's
Southern
some like
California.
great like pros living around here, right?
Yeah, like Danny Way lives in Vista, Tony Hawk's in Carlsbad, and
Oh yeah.
there's like a huge skate scene down here, and it's just really fed out into the rest of the world from here, kind of, you could say. But there's definitely like major scenes too, like in New York and like I think Philadelphia or something like that, or like just like random places across the states, like, and I know it's growing in Colorado right now too.
Colorado.
It's always
wow.
kind of interesting.
Yeah.
But California, man, I think we're so lucky to live here because there's so much happening and just like so much culture that just like flows from California. Like it's unbelievable.
Yeah. Dang. Yeah, so where do you typically, or like how often do you skate these days?
Lately I haven't been skating too much because I guess I'm not hanging out with my friends as much during these times, but
Yeah, true.
also I'm just trying to get away from it slowly, or at least like keep it in a healthy distance in my life, because my main priority now is just to play guitar. So if I ever get hurt skateboarding, it's not worth it, because then that sets me back on my playing, and I could risk breaking something even. Just so many unpredictable factors, because any trick sport you do, you're risking injury almost every time you try something.
Yeah.
Just like doing a trick, jumping on your board, like anytime, one wrong thing could just happen where there's just so many variables that go into performing that you could screw yourself up pretty bad, pretty easily, pretty quickly if you're not aware. But, the more experienced you are, the easier it definitely gets. You learn how to bail out. But yeah, I would say like especially street skating where there's like obstacles that they're less predictable because you're not They're not at a park, so it's not set up for skating sometimes, but skaters just learn how to like do tricks on those obstacles, and it's just insane what they can do nowadays. Like, it's
Yeah.
just things that people are doing things today, like that nobody would have ever thought possible. That like this is like people are doing things today that we were only seeing like in video games, like just 10 years ago. Like it's just
Oh,
like,
you mean
oh
like
yeah, man. There's no way somebody's gonna do like a laser back tail, like, you know, heel flip out or something. Like, it's just like, what the heck? Like, that's just so insanely, I don't know. But now it's just like, dude, there's somebody out there that can probably do that crazy trick, or like people are just getting crazier. It's just, I don't understand it. It's like, it's kind of brings me to like this idea of like fantasy versus reality.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I feel like with today's world, like this is something I've been really thinking about a lot recently, because I think it was last month or maybe a couple months ago that there's this Japanese reality TV show called Terrace House, and this girl named Hana Kimura, she took her own life, and it was from just like the show, the way it was edited, and the way they presented her in some episodes or something like that, resulted in like massive cyberbullying, and yeah, it was just too much pressure for her, so she ended up taking her own life, and that was just really tragic to hear about. And you know, even aside from that, that was really angering to me.
Yeah.
Just to think that like this is a Japanese TV show, and it's primarily initially aired in Japan, so it's like, you know, it's all this pressure is coming from our own nation, you know, and that really, like, I'm half Japanese, so that really kind of bothered me.
Yeah.
But even aside from that, like just as aside from all that, like just really the factors of how the internet makes the world a lot more interconnected, and so social media, especially, is this place where now everybody's just posting what they're doing every day. You know, for better or worse, like not everything on there is like consumably worthy or worthy of consumption, but the majority of it speaking, you know, like whatever is getting a lot of buzz and popularity, a lot of likes and shares, that's going to at least be in your feed. So you're going to be exposed a lot more to higher tier players, higher tier skill sets of people across the nation, across the world. And so this expands you to a community, even if it's not in your backyard. You know, I mean, we're lucky to be here in California, for example, where volleyball and skateboarding can be like, you can be immersed in it if you go out there and look for it. But some people, you know, they might be like in like Indonesia or like Thailand or like Brazil or something, and they're just where maybe like some type of skate culture is not there or something, or volleyball maybe, or any type of thing, you know, any guitar or pastry chefs, you know, who knows? Like there's all kinds of cultures in the world that it's all varied. It's all in a variation of in terms of where they're allocated more heavily and not. But anyway, so this exposure from social media and the internet like brings us all together closer, and then we're exposed more often, more frequently to people who are pushing the boundaries and pushing the skill sets that are once that were sorry. So we're just pushing our standard more and more, and we're seeing more people do that, push those standards, and because we're able to do that, the standard within ourselves is increasing. So it's almost like our imagination being tethered to the internet and absorbing what we consume on the internet is allowing us to transcend what we thought was possible in reality. So like this fantasy side of social media and, you know, like the internet is just blurring the lines between fantasy and reality to a point where now it's allowing us to transcend the boundaries and the standards of what we once thought was possible or impossible.
Yeah.
And just as much as that has a good side to it, there's a negative side to it, you know, and we can, just as much as I've been elaborating a little bit on the good side of these things of the internet, like we could also go into the negative side too as well. And that's almost like a whole nother topic. It's just insane. But
it is, yeah.
Yeah, you have to think just as much good is coming out of the internet, that there's a equal amount of bad consequences that are resulting from the power that's contained within and comes from as a result of this massive convenience.
Yeah. Yeah, so what are you basically saying? Like that we see the internet and it gives us like a new perception of what is possible and what's like fantasy, and then we try to emulate those kind of things, or basically, or yeah,
totally. Like I know, for example, my brother, he's into something called tricking, and it's where you're just doing like body aerials, flips, and it's all flat ground, so it's not parkour or anything. Parkour has to do with jumping across buildings and objects, but tricking is just flat ground. So you're just doing tricks on flat ground. And then I saw an interview with somebody that was talking about like, yeah, man, this is like what I wanted to do as a kid, watching Ninja Turtles or something, right? Like,
oh yeah.
And to me, that's like another way of like looking at how fantasy became reality. You know, like nobody thought these types of things were possible, flat ground or something like that, you know, or there's the culture of like tricking that like people are doing these moves that nobody thought was possible. And now it's like, it's actually, this type of thing is like a small community today, but like it's growing, and because of the internet, more and more people are getting into it. And then same with the skateboarding, like the video games. We're watching, like I remember just playing Skate 3 or Skate 2 and you just do the craziest tricks just because you can on skate. And
yeah,
I just remember like thinking like, oh my gosh, like nobody could ever do that in real life. Like, you know, it's just like, this is insane. Like a, you know, just like double flip out or something, or like triple flip in, you know, or whatever, you know, just crazy stuff. But it's like, there's this degree and this point where like, I mean, who knows? Maybe it's not directly related or a consequence of these improvements, but maybe the improvements were already nested in the pre-set circumstances, you know, that were, you know, the moment somebody does a single flip kickflip is the possibility that opens up for a second, or for a double kickflip, you know, and then a triple kickflip, and then a quadruple kickflip. And then it's just going to be endless, you know, as to how many flips one can achieve. But the achievement of one thing immediately implies or nests the potential for the next level to be achieved, even if maybe it seems impossible at the time.
Well,
so maybe that's too.
To a certain extent, though, I think, because like, I think it's not about like, you know, doing what were you saying, like one something kickflip? What was the term you were using?
Oh yeah, like somebody can do a single kickflip, and then achieving a single kickflip can just immediately, it leads to the double kickflip and then the triple kickflip, and then it's almost like the achievement of each one is implying that, or it's already setting the stage for the next one to be achieved.
Right. So we're seeing this trend of like boundaries being pushed, but within like our limited potential. Because there is actually like throughout sports history, since the early 1900s all the way till modern day till now, we're seeing improvements in performance of like the fastest mile time or just sprinting 100 meters. And it seems like people are getting faster, or pitchers are throwing harder, and shot putters are throwing farther. Just like boundaries are being pushed in the world of sports, but we're actually at the point where we're reaching like limits. And there's actually this really cool YouTube channel that I've seen a couple videos from, but it's like a sports science YouTube channel, and it'll be like talking about where the limits of human like capacity is with movement. And so it uses like studies of kinesiology, anatomy, and physics to show like why a quintuple kickflip would be impossible, or like why, like, so the first video I watched from this channel was like why 120 mile, or like why 110 mile per hour fastball is impossible. Or let me find the channel. But it's cool because it talks about like, yeah, we've been pushing the boundaries, but we're reaching a point where we're actually hitting the potential that humans can hit.
Well, yeah, I would say that probably is true for some things more than others. Like, for example, like, yeah, I agree with you. Like, there is a limit to what you can do on flat ground. Like, but then the moment you implement a ramp or some more speed or a gap, or, you know what I mean? Like, you can start adding more things. And even if maybe you couldn't have done that trick on flat ground, now you can do it on a ramp, or maybe some tricks are only doable down stuff or off something, or, but you know, so maybe whether or not like it's achievable in this setting, it could be achievable in another setting, or but that's with regard to skateboarding, right? But then maybe you could say, well, there's only a limit to exactly how fast we can run, you know, and then you could probably say, yeah, I mean, sure, you can maybe change it from asphalt to turf to sand or solid gravel, or like,
so then
I don't know, you know,
we're getting into how like technology also aids in the extension of pushing human limitations and achievement. And I found the channel though. Well, the channel itself is actually Wired, but they have like a whole bunch of stuff. But their web series is called Almost Impossible, and so they do stuff like why it's almost impossible to shot put 24 meters, or why it's almost impossible to do a quintuple cork in tricking. Hey, that's exactly what you're referring to.
What?
Why it's almost impossible to make a 7-10 split in bowling, why it's almost impossible to kick a 90-yard field goal, why it's almost impossible to hit a 160 mile per hour tennis serve, and 16 more episodes. The first one I watched was why it's almost impossible to throw a 110 mile per hour fastball. And so in it, they talk about how like we've been getting, so back to the 110 mile per hour fastball one, like it was talking about how like pitchers were throwing like fastballs around like high 70s for a long time, and then you know, a pitcher came along and threw in the 80s, and then everyone was throwing 80 mile per hour fastballs. And then another pitcher came along and threw like a 92 mile per hour fastball, and it's like, whoa, like now that's the fastest. Until like within a couple, or within like the last 2 decades at least, it wasn't that long ago. Like we've had pitchers throw 100 miles per hour or slightly over, and so you would expect like, oh, we're just gonna keep throwing faster and faster and faster, but there's actually a limit, and it's like right around 110 mile per hour that like humans can't outperform, and talks about why and like the physics behind it. And but part of the reason why like we get faster or like our limits are pushed and we're achieving higher capacities is one of the factors is what Lawrence is talking about, how like once you see one record broken, it pushes the mind's ability to think like past that and like, oh well, I'm gonna try and beat that record, and then that record gets broken and the process continues. But another factor is just the fact that technology is getting better. Like baseballs are made a little bit differently than they were back then, and so it's easier to throw 100-mile-per-hour fastball with modern day baseballs, than if you took a baseball from like the 1930s.
Wow.
It might not be like that exact example, but it's like that concept of how like running shoes, for example, like the fastest 100-meter dash used to be, Jesse Owens used to hold the record for a really long time. He ran in the 1930s, and so I think it was the 1938 Olympics. 1936 Olympics, if I'm not mistaken. But nowadays, his records are easily broken because the shoes that professional runners are running in are designed to be a lot faster than the shoes that they were running in back then. So part of it is the technology, but part of it actually is just human willpower to push their bodies harder than we even thought possible. And I'm a huge advocate of that mindset. There's a rule that the Navy SEALs have called the 40% rule, and it goes something along the lines of when you reach the point where you think you cannot possibly push any farther, take one more step, move one more inch at all, you've actually only used 40% of your strength or 40% of your ability. So that's not even 50. Like you're not even halfway done yet. When you think you've reached the point where you cannot possibly go any longer, you're not even halfway there. You could push your body so much farther. And that percentage, that's just to paint a mental picture. There's no actual real science there. But it's just, it's not about the actual statistic of like 40%. It's just a number they use that they adopt into their mindset to think like, when I think I've hit my limit, I'm not even halfway there. Like I could push myself so much farther. And, they live by that attitude and carry that out in their day to day. And, like I try to adopt that same mindset of like, when you think you cannot possibly push yourself anymore, you've really only used 40% of your capacity. You could go so much more farther. And so I think athletes are a huge example of, putting that idea into practice of like, you could push yourself way more than you thought possible. And we're seeing huge advancements and achievements in world records and the Olympics and, just other facets of sport. But it's interesting that you bring that topic up, Lawrence, because I believe in a previous podcast, I was talking about how like the concept of the feedback loop of how technology pushes the imagination and an imagination pushes technology and technology pushes imagination. And it just, did I talk about that in the podcast?
Yeah.
Dude, I think we talked, I feel like we talked about it in the literature podcast. When we talked about literature, and it's like, and I think Lawrence was also touching on this earlier, like, it's like something has to be conceived somewhere in humanity, and then someone else like accomplishes that conceived idea. And then like that's why we were saying like literature fictional might have actually been useful in some ways.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
actually funny. That does relate to that.
Yeah. And
Dang.
I think the biggest concrete example I could think of off the top of my head about that is the early 1900s film Le Voyage de la Lune, which is, hold on, so it was a 1902 film, translated in English to A Trip to the Moon, and it was just it was a fictional work of, you know, people traveling to the moon, and they encounter like extraterrestrial beings there, and they get into a fight. And it's a black and white silent picture. You've probably heard of it before, or seen it before. And anyway, in this movie, they get to the moon by entering a cannon shell and getting fired from a super huge cannon to the moon in the shell, and then the shell crash lands on the moon, and that's how they get there. And so before the technology was even invented, this writer had the imagination of the way to get to the moon is through some type of what's like the word, like long range firearm, you know. And it wasn't until almost a little over 6 years later, you know, we were getting to the moon on the end of a rocket, which was rockets were used during World War II as long-range firearms. Or firearms is not the right word. Projectiles, that's the word I'm looking for. And so even though there's a difference between like a cannon shell and a rocket, it was a long-range projectile weapon that got us to the moon in both this 1902 black and white silent film and what actually happened in 1969 when Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin actually landed on the moon. So
Wow.
that's a concrete example of someone's imagination pushing technology. And you know, technology is going to continue to push the imagination, and the imagination is going to continue to push technology, and so on and so forth. It's just this positive feedback loop until another like apocalyptic event like the Black Plague happens. Maybe that's COVID, maybe not, I don't know, but
Yeah.
there seems to be that trend between imagination and technology pushing each other.
Yeah, that's probably better to put it that way rather than just the internet or something like that.
Right.
That's true.
Well, maybe like the internet is an important part though, because it's like the medium
Yeah,
through
it's
which
a novelty.
Well, it's like the medium through which these things can now travel. Like in the past, maybe you had to be like an author and write a book, get it published, get it distributed to people, and then these ideas are in people's heads. Whereas now on the internet, like the spread of ideas is so much faster and more like broad. And so I do think that the internet plays an important role in like the future of like this concept. And I'm really interested to see what things like come of it as well.
Yeah. I saw this well, this is kind of random. It's not that I want to be known for well, you know, it's a part of my digging into life and philosophy and just whatnot. But there's this guy named Terrence McKenna, and he's kind of like a psychonaut who took like psychedelics and stuff. But aside from all of that he was known for, he yeah, I'm not really sure exactly how much of this can really be attributed to him. You know, how much of this can be attributed to, or being credited to him, but it was his video that I saw where he was talking about this idea that the universe is a complexifying engine. So novelty, which means complexity, it's like the universe is generating forms of complexity, and those forms of complexity consolidate and into a foundation that allows then for more complexity to be stimulated. So you can think of like terms of biology and evolution, how everything on Earth was once just like in a soup of water, and our origins really stem from like bacterial organisms, microorganisms, and developing into larger, more complex compounded beings. Like now what once was like just bacterial cells, we as what is it called,
cellular?
Yeah, multicellular organisms. We are multicellular organisms. So we have like liver cells and heart cells and skin cells and all these different cells that compose our organs and creates our bodies. And then from there, now we have the mind, and that's just looking at us as humans, but you can see like the multitude and the variations that biology reveals itself in its development through all the different species that are existing across the world, the planet, and the Amazon rainforest, and the different types of cats that exist out there, and dogs, and monkeys, and plants, trees, and insects. Especially insects are like one of the most like diverse species on the planet, I believe. But I just think that's kind of an interesting concept, how like complexity is generated and then forms a foundation that allows for more complexity. But I believe in that. So in my understanding of it is that like complexity is formed. So you could say this is like chaos, and then that chaos has to establish harmony in order for more chaos to ensue, and allows for a higher form of complexity in harmony. And then from there, like we just keep evolving. And then so he was kind of like a spirit science guy. So he was kind of saying there's got to be some kind of omega point where we reach an epitome of who we are as humans and stuff like that. But
what's the
I
name
just like
of this
that
guy?
idea. Terrence McKenna. TerranceMcKenna.
Interesting.
But
Is there a name for that concept of the complexity and chaos and harmony? What you're just talking?
I used to have the video on my computer. I can try to find it right now.
I made it myself.
While I do that, though, I can find the video. I wanted to mention there's this there's other people too. Rupert Sheldrake and another man I can't remember. But they're all like talking together. I think there was a name for that theory that or it's not necessarily a theory. I think it's really a speculative thing. It's not necessarily meant to be treated as a law or anything.
Right. Not a dogma.
Yeah. I definitely like the idea. There's like another video that I saw with the same guy and his colleagues, Rupert Sheldrake and man, I'm really trying to remember the other guy's name, but they're talking about morphogenic fields. So like everything well, I don't know exactly to the extent that they're talking about this, but basically everything kind of has a morphogenic field. So you could think of like yourself having a morphogenic field, and your morphogenic field is basically just like the environment or the niche that you're living in, and all the relationships of the people that you have in your life that surround you are kind of basically a part of your morphogenic field, and that influences your evolutionary development and your DNA, your biological makeup, and you can break it down to the energetic level. And I'm really honestly not entirely sure exactly to what degree they were speculating this concept, but I just like that idea too, of just how, instead of saying morphogenic field, you could just say like everything is a bubble, everything has bubbles, and like it's like we're the bubble of San Diego, and then I'm in the bubble of Lawrence's house or Lawrence's dad's house, and then everybody has bubbles in their own houses and their own cities and friend groups. And when you leave a country, you come back, you're like, wow, everything's here happening as it kind of was when I first left. It's kind of like a bubble, that vibe. I always thought that was fascinating.
Yeah. I've also found it interesting to just kind of think about the idea of like the universe being like basically order against chaos. Like I guess he was saying it as complexity.
Yeah.
I think that's like another way of putting it, but I was just thinking of it in terms of like order against chaos. Like, I don't know. It's like life is one instance of order. Like, because you have molecules which are arranged into a cell, then cells which are arranged into tissue and so forth, into creating whatever kind of animal that is. That's like a very high level of organization right there. And then when you have like natural like events happening that would like destroy like life, then that's like the chaos. Like if we were hit by an asteroid, that's just like the chaos of the universe, like wiping it out. And it's like, I just found myself wondering, like, why is it that complexity or order has made it this far without being wiped out? Like that was just this thought that was just kind of crazy for me to comprehend. Because it's like, yeah, like why? I don't know. Like certain lives.
Personally, it is for that exact reason that I believe in a creation.
Yeah.
Is because the order that we see in the world is far too complex to just have come along by itself.
Yeah. Yeah. It is a crazy thing, no matter how you look at it. It's a beautiful thing. It's an amazing thing.
It is a beautiful thing. I was actually watching a really interesting video because I'm studying math for my CSET exam. I came across a video about the golden ratio and the Fibonacci sequence.
Yeah.
And so I kind of went off on a tangent, but ended up watching this video, and it was really cool talking about just how you see all these elements of design in nature and cosmology and the human body and just so many places. And it's very evident that there is a complex order to how the universe is and everything in it is organized.
Yeah.
And I believe that there's a reason for that, but
yeah. Yeah, what are your thoughts on that, Lawrence?
I'm sorry. I tuned out there for a second. That's really bad of me.
Oh, that's okay. Do you have any theories as to why such order has come to exist at all?
Yeah, or in like, are you referring also in regards to like maybe God or?
Yeah, like Adam believes that it. Adam just said that he believes that it was all created.
Yeah. Wow.
I just believe that design is evidence for a designer.
Yeah.
If you see a program, like, you know that program came from a programmer who wrote it. You're not like, whoa, like a whole bunch of rocks fell on this keyboard randomly and outputted this entire complex program for this computer to run on, and it all happened by chance. It's like, no, like, you see a program, you know that someone programmed it. And I think for me, it's hard for me to see a seemingly programmed universe and think that it all happened by chance.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's hard to almost believe that any of this is just blindly happening, you know? It's definitely a question that I've been pursuing for a long time now, because to some extent, no matter how I look at the world or what I could go out and experience in life with my own two hands and my own firsthand perception, like, there's this like considerable amount of faith involved, you know, in life. And even if you're not religious, or even if you, like, especially for if you are, but or more obviously, right? But even if you're not religious, for anybody who's not religiously, you know, it's like, I think a lot of people take it for granted the concept and understanding that faith provides, and just the core fact that, like, everything we do in life is founded upon a belief, you know. So like, when you look at a lamp, you like, oh, I believe that lamp is actually there. Yeah, I know it exists. Like, it's like, are you really so sure? You know, there's like a faith involved in everything that we do and everything that we think and believe.
100%. Yeah.
Every step I take,
totally...
I'm trusting that the floor beneath me is not going to crash, you know, or break beneath me, and I'm going to fall through into another dimensional reality or something. Or that takes a certain degree of like believing in faith. And I think there's like, and this is some ideas that I've just mentioned here that I've got from Alan Watts, as I listened to him a lot when I was in high school. But
Alan Watts.
Yeah, he's a cool guy.
He is a cool guy.
Just like a religious philosopher. I mean, although, you know, I think I would say though that his Christian understanding of Christian philosophy wasn't as like polished as it could have been, but I do value.
Yeah, there's a lot that he says I disagree with. But
yeah,
that doesn't mean I don't enjoy listening to him.
Totally.
And, he's a super smart guy, and he's definitely smarter than me.
Yeah.
So he's
super literate.
Yeah.
But yeah, like just that idea about faith in the ground as you take a step, I got from him. And like also just the kind of this, but yeah, you know, like it's just weird, like how life, everything we do, everything we think has a belief that's nested within that. You know, there's an assumption or an implication that you believe these various sorts of things in order for that very thought or idea or belief or action, even because actions are rooted in our ideas and beliefs and perception, that all those things are rooted in further implications or further assumptions or past experiences and memories. And I don't know, you know, I can't, like, I, like, personally speaking, like, I believe in God, but at the same time, I don't, how do we say, like, I guess I'm not settled in that entirely. Like, you know, it's not that I'm like going every day thinking like, is God real today? Is God not real? Like, it's like, I don't know. I have this sense that God is real, but what I don't have as much of a sense of is exactly what in that portrayal is actually accurate, or my sensing of that is accurate, and like to what degree is like everything that goes on in life and in history today and in the past, like to what degree that all going on, is that actually contributing to my synthesis of what I think and believe, or even like potentially contributing to deception, or even the actualization of that fact and truth, and so it's like such a complex topic, like I try not to, just out of personal respect too, I just try to be hands off with it, but yeah, I don't know. Okay, so I guess I'll just come out and say it, but basically I feel like where we come from is, to me, not the most important thing. It's like
Yeah.
not that it's not the most important thing, but it's like a type of argument that I think a lot of people get hung up on, that they shouldn't be, because no matter how far we go back in time, we'll never be able to prove it. And that's where faith comes in. And this can even come back to the idea of just complexity. It seems that like we need to have this diversity of thought, and eventually for some type of consolidation. But this also, in this consolidating phase, it's not the easiest thing, because you literally have to chop off your arm and then chop off a toe, and in order to like figure out like, who am I really? And it's the most painful thing in the world. It's not easy. And but yeah, I just I think like, even if we had a God, and even if we didn't have a God, it's like, whoever's trying to say that God doesn't exist or God does exist, like that argument is like futile, I feel like, because if we go to the core of it, like, what is love? And I think there's even like verses, like, because I do read the Bible and I went to church a few years. There's like a verse, I think, in Titus 3 that talks about not to dwell on controversial matters or whatnot, not to get like caught up in debate over like, I can try to find it, but
like, well, what's the general like idea?
Oh, so that just basically, because that's not, at the end of the day, that's not gonna help you get closer towards God or love, and because when I think about God, like I think of God in two ways. Like I think of God the Father, but I also think of God like the all-encompassing phenomena of existence,
like
that
omnipresent, omniscient,
omnipotent,
omnibenevolent being.
But I almost don't even, because that part actually I've been like contemplating on recently a lot, is that like, so this is where I start maybe like pulling on threads and like start opening doors that maybe shouldn't be open. It's kind of like sketchy territory, because there's like, I feel like my speculation is not really quite there yet, but basically, if God is all knowing, to connect with something that is omnipotent or omniscient, omnipresent, to connect with something like that is, for us in our limited minds, does not mean to have access to that, though there is this sense that, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. It's like, so I have access to that power, but I also have no capability of really perceiving that depth and that breadth of omniscience and omnipresence, and and
because we're all limited, finite, imperfect beings, and so it's out of our mental capacity and our physical capacity to comprehend something infinite when we're limited to a finite being.
And it's strange to me, because then in that understanding, though, like I feel like just that factual basis right there, and then knowing where the Bible comes from, like it's the Word of God. People have written this book, but it's all divinely inspired. All scriptures is God breathed, and so, but even though it's God breathed, because we are limited beings, as infinite as God is in all His wisdom, it's like this book actually does not contain the infinite wisdom that is God, which is kind of strange to think about. Or you could say it is, but it's God's word, and so there is some type of doorway through the Bible that is accessing God's omniscience, and yet at the same time, though, like to me, that just potentially indicates, though, too, that like I cannot fully access God just through the Bible alone, but somehow I can, though. It's like a paradox, you know what I mean? Like it's like weird, but like I guess like I could set the Bible down, or I could hold it. I could do anything I want, and this is where I kind of like start delving in, incorporating Eastern philosophy, just the idea of being in the moment, in the present moment, because the only place you can access God is now.
Yeah.
If you're in your mind thinking about the past or the future, you're not allowing yourself to tune into this moment now, which is where God exists.
You're a wise man, Lawrence.
Thanks. But it's like an interesting idea,
interesting stuff.
I think, and then so, at that point you could say like, well, do I really need this book then? Could I like, no, I think, yeah, like technically speaking, you do need the Bible, like especially Christianity, to be a Christian, to be a follower of Christ, to know Christ's words and to know the Son of God and make him your Lord and Savior. You have to know the Lord to follow the Lord. You can't just assume everything and then because then you become the Lord. And
Right.
That's false deityship, I guess.
Yeah.
But
I'm impressed, Lawrence. You are a very wise man. You're speaking a lot of wisdom and a lot of truth right now. We need to hang out more often, man.
I'm down, dude.
Yeah, definitely. We need a like in person around the bonfire.
Yeah, that'd be so chill.
Yeah, I would love to like set that up too. I know Andy's got like an audio interface with several inputs, right, Andy?
Oh yeah.
I mean, we don't even have to podcast in person. We could just all hang out just for fun.
Well, yeah, that's true.
That
exists.
That's too. We could just be chilling right now.
I got a pretty cool backyard with a bonfire set up we could use if you ever wanted to, and and Logan, I know you do too. So
yeah,
hell yeah,
yeah. I think it was last week's episode where Andy, he started watching a YouTube video of a fire, and I joined him, and it made me want a fire so much that I had one like the next night. Yeah. They're nice. There's something about a fire that's something's kind of warm about it.
Yeah, super inviting and opens, makes you comfy.
Yeah.
Actually, that's a kind of interesting topic. Like I definitely have my own ideas about this, and I hope not to like let it just settle to that. But just the idea of vulnerability, like what does that really mean? Because I think we could look at it in two
that's
ways.
What this podcast is all about, Lawrence. Yeah, being vulnerable with each other, being ourselves.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
Podcast.
Yeah. It's like trippy, like because you could think of like vulnerability in one sense, like not in one sense actually, but it's just that vulnerability can sometimes put you in weak situations, or it can put you in a situation that can be defeating, or put you in in a weak position, a lesser strength, but it could be argued that learning how to deal with those situations will give you the confidence and strength to be vulnerable in the right ways, so you can gain a strength in vulnerability, it seems, but there's another, it just seems like there's different ways of looking at vulnerability. But I think based on what I've learned about being passive, because you could say maybe being passive could be a way of being vulnerable. So like yielding. So like if somebody says something to me, like, oh yeah, I'm just going to agree with it and accept it, all right. And maybe I'm being vulnerable there by accepting the situation, but maybe I'm not, maybe I'm actually shelled up and actually not being vulnerable enough with myself. Actually, I might be, well, I don't know. Maybe it's, and there might be a vulnerability within there that I'm concealing simply by just not expressing myself. And expressing yourself is a hugely vulnerable thing, and it takes courage. But I think like vulnerability is often associated with weakness, is what I'm getting at. Yeah. And actually vulnerability is not a weakness, and it's like, in fact, the most difficult thing to do because of how much strength it requires.
Yeah, you're putting yourself out there.
Yeah. For real.
There's some quality about human nature where we don't like, how do I phrase this? Like we care too much about what other people think about us.
Exactly.
And we don't like being judged. I feel like judged isn't the right word, but that's kind of like the slang term used.
Maybe labeled?
Or not the slang term, but like the common word used today is like, oh, don't judge me, or I don't want to be judged, or
or even just caught. Like I don't want to be known, almost like, because to be known is to be predictable, and nobody wants to be so predictable that you're not interesting.
Well, and I think deep down it's not about like we don't want to be known, not because like we don't want to be predictable or seem uninteresting. I think deep down we want to be known because we know that we're messed up. We're all imperfect. We're all everyone has their dark side, and I myself, just because I'm a Christian, I would call it our sinful nature. But I think regardless of what you believe, I think everyone agrees that every human being is not perfect, and we all kind of have our own dark side, and we could choose to act on it or not. But I think we know how messed up we are and how non-perfect we are, and for some reason, like, we know that everybody else is that way too, but we're afraid to let other people see that aspect of ourselves, and so we're afraid to be known because we don't want others to really see all of us. We only want others to see the good part of us, like our super ego. If you follow Freudian theory of the id, the ego, and the super ego, like we only want to display our super ego. We don't want to display our id, but everyone has an id, everyone has a super ego, and they're in constant conflict with each other. And
Can you remind me of which each of those means again?
Oh yeah, well, have you ever seen The Emperor's New Groove?
Oh, probably like way long ago.
You know that scene when Kronk has like an angel on his shoulder, and on the other shoulder he has a devil?
Oh, yeah.
Do you kind of know that? It doesn't have to be from Emperor's New Groove, but just at the concept of like the idea of there's
and a bad conscience.
And then, there's like the devil on one shoulder talking into one ear, and then there's an angel on the other shoulder talking into the other ear. And I think that's a perfect picture to paint when explaining the id, ego, and super ego. So the id would be like the devil on your shoulder talking into your ear. Your super ego is the angel on your other shoulder talking into the other ear. And then your ego is your actual self. Like
Okay.
who you actually are, who, like, your presentable self, the person that others perceive you to be is your ego. Another example I could use is Christopher Nolan's The Dark Knight. He uses the Freudian concept of the id, ego, and superego in his characters. So Batman would be the superego, Joker would be the id, and Harvey Dent's Two-Face character, that would be the ego. Just kind of the idea of like being torn between the hero part of you and the villain part of you. And
Jeez. Is that something that you interpreted from the movie, or was that something that was explicitly like stated at some point? Because I never really thought of it that way.
yeah, I don't know. I don't think it's like, I think I saw like an illustration. I'm really into concept art, especially with like film, like film concept art, or just superheroes in general too. But I think it was just, I saw a concept artist draw like the id, ego, and superego corresponding to each of the characters in The Dark Knight. I think that's where I got it from. But
I see.
didn't get it. It's not explicitly stated anywhere.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I'm almost thinking you could probably go into the id, superego, and ego of Batman himself, even because he has like a dark persona, but definitely most expressively through his ego is like a super, his, you know, his good side, you know, but he has this dark side that maybe could be tethered to his id, maybe, you know, which is why he's like a dark hero. Well, I guess the fact that he does good, though, it's like he doesn't do evil per se.
Uh-huh.
I would have to know more about Batman to do that analysis. But that, I know that's very Freudian stuff. You know, there's his predecessor, no, his successor was Carl Jung, C.G. Jung, Jung, and
yeah, I've heard.
Yeah, he like, you know, further elaborated on those
Jungian
concepts
shadow, right?
with the shadow and like the anima and the animus, and which is like every male has a anima, which is like the feminine, the inner feminine of a man, and then every woman has an animus, which is like the inner masculine of a woman. And also there's like there's a collective consciousness, or a collective conscience, which is like the societal conscience, like the societal norms, you could say. How they influence you is the collective conscience within you, you know. So you're like, oh, like murder is obviously wrong, and stealing is obviously bad, and lying is wrong too. Like all this comes from like your collective conscience. But then there's like other layers of like the ego and the super ego, and I'm not quite sure, but I don't think that Jung implements the id. I think he like broke that into something else or something like that, and he even brought up the idea of an unconscious or a subconscious or something like that. There's definitely a difference between, it's important to note that there is a difference between something being unconscious and subconscious. Because like if it's subconscious, I don't know, you know, it's kind of weird. Like I've actually read somewhere too from this book called Freedom from the Known by J. Krishnamurti, where he said, there's no such thing as subconscious, you know, it's just unconscious and conscious. Because if it's subconscious, it just doesn't make sense. It's like you don't know about it anyway, so it's just not conscious. So I thought that was an interesting idea, but I think Jung came up with this concept of subconscious or unconscious, at least, to the very least, one of those two.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's like interesting though. I think Adam, you brought that up because we were talking about like vulnerability and we're talking about vulnerability and I think courage and the strength to express yourself and I guess truth maybe,
or at least the pursuit of truth.
yeah, the attempt to express it. Yeah, I'm trying to remember like why we got to that, but it's okay.
Yeah, I can't remember either.
Do you know, Andy?
No.
Sorry.
What's up, Andy?
Hey.
Yeah, Andy, what are your thoughts on all this?
On what in particular?
Oh, no, I was just hoping that you're gonna start talking and then we remember.
Oh. So you covered a lot, so I don't know what
I know.
address.
Please provide a summary. Just kidding. Not even we can.
In 10 sentences or less.
But
Yeah. We need a book report on this.
No, what do you think, Andy, about I guess vulnerability and
When it comes to people being willing to open up?
yeah, or even you could talk about like what it means to like open up is what's that vulnerability versus like maybe how does vulnerability help you achieve things maybe or be successful in life in relationships or in your own pursuits.
Oh man, you gotta slow it down there. I'm getting one thing at a time. Let's see. I think being vulnerable is something. Yeah, I think it is something people aren't very like comfortable with, just generally.
Yeah.
And I think I don't know. I think it's like there's just some expectation, whether or not it's like what Adam was saying, or whether it's got some other reasons. I think it is there. It does make, at least for me, it's like hard to like connect with people just because I think they're kind of in this shell of like, oh, I have to act. I kind of have to act. Okay, so you know how like there's like small talk. There's that like stage of small talk.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah,
they're
like in every
stuck
conversation.
that. Yeah, and I don't really know when. I guess you can't know when you're ready to like move out of that. But it kind of seems like typically I'm kind of stuck in that with a lot of people I know personally, and it's just like, oh well, this is kind of annoying. I just want to move on to that something else.
Is that you being stuck, like not being able to be vulnerable, or is it that they are more stuck in the small talk? Like where does it feel like?
Oh yeah, I mean,
who's stuck?
I can't say for sure, but I think it's more of the other person, of the other people.
Yeah.
But that is hard to say. It's kind of me pointing fingers. But
do you feel like in those situations that you're ready to open up, but yet you don't, like the conversation just doesn't end up flowing there?
Yeah, that's for sure. I think I've even like tried to go. Yeah, like I think I've tried to just go deep in the sense of like go past the small talk like very early on, and it was like I think they thought it was awkward, the person I did it to, so that was like, oh man, I can't do this anymore. But
dang,
yeah, so I don't know, maybe there's that concept of like social lubricant where you can't just say whatever you want.
Yeah,
I don't know if I agree with it, but that is a thing that you have to be aware of, I guess.
Totally.
Can I please ask you to tell the story of you going straight for the deep question? I'm just picturing something like, Dang, it's the weather today is actually quite nice. Yeah. What's the meaning of life?
It was.
Please do tell.
I don't really remember, but I do remember. I just remember coming out of that like, okay, I'm not gonna. You know how you like don't remember. People don't really remember the bad parts, the bad details, as much as the better details.
Yeah.
So like, I don't remember because that wasn't something I was very proud of. But what I did take out of it was like, yeah, I'm not going to do that again. That's like my lesson. I think I was just like, somebody was doing small talk and I was like, I don't really feel like this right now. So let's just skip this. And I kind of challenged them on some like small talk thing. And they just kind of got defensive and like, well, I just want to talk about the weather. So sorry, that's all you're going to get kind of thing.
Dang.
It was something like that. And I just now know I'm not going to do as much of that.
Yeah, you could probably ease into
like
it though, because it can be kind of like a deep question is deep, you know, so it's going to hit a deeper chord within your heart, your soul, or something like that, or just within your conscience, your memories. And then what that's going to do is it's going to bring up a lot more controversial things. It's also going to force the person to have to think, because not a lot of people like to think. And also, naturally speaking, our brains tend to err towards a side of consolidating things into memories, so that way we don't have to think as much, so we can spend our thinking on other things that actually matter. And then also, if you're in society, you might not want to, if you're trying to have a good time in public, you might not want to think at all. That might be the last thing you're trying to do because you work or something, or you go to school all day. So like the last thing I'm trying to do is think. But and that's where it just gets so deep. Like the deep subject, sometimes people don't have the energy for it, or sometimes it involves such a nuanced level of expression that people haven't achieved yet, maybe because they don't go to those places very often, so they feel least in their zone, or their you know what I mean, and so then they're way less comfortable expressing themselves in that area of life, or it might implement so for example, like, it's kind of funny because like that question, how are you doing, or how's it going, that question is like such a double-edged sword, because somebody who's going through a really hard time in life, everything that's just weighing on them is just coming across their mind, and they're supposed to say good. But then somebody else, like, you know, it's like, oh yeah, thanks for asking, you know, I'm doing good, you know. But if that person does have something weighing on them, there's a whole other conversation and things to say about that. But yeah, that's where like things that can be deep, I feel like I've tended to actually like go away from that as well, because I've noticed how it affects people and how it can actually lead to negative situations too. Like, and I feel like there is a time and place for everything, but yeah, it's kind of unfortunate.
Yeah.
It's not always. Yeah, I don't know. Not meaning to tell you like what to do or say or whatever, but just bringing up those ideas as a potential as to why I feel like people are so averse to deep subjects. Because I've definitely experienced the same thing too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I feel like we all have in this. Like everybody right here.
Oh,
right now.
for sure. And
that's
I think that
something we're all like we have that in common.
Yeah.
And I think that stems back to what we were saying earlier about people being afraid to be vulnerable, because when you ask deep questions, or rather, I guess, when someone has to answer deep questions, those deep answers reveal, you know, deeper inner qualities about themselves. And you know, you have to be vulnerable to share those things, but people don't like being vulnerable. And I think that's where the averseness to
opening up,
deeper conversations, and opening up and answering deeper questions comes from, is that same concept of being vulnerable that we touched on a little earlier.
Yeah.
That's funny that we just say that's the
Yeah.
unfortunate. Like Lawrence, you said that. But I think for me, I'm just frustrated that we can't. And of course, I don't know. I'm going to sound real insensitive, I guess, but I'm just frustrated, that we can't just like strive to be better and challenge ourselves.
Dude, for real.
But I don't know how.
I'm with you on
Well,
that.
I think part of the reason is I see in all four of us, like, we're very comfortable being ourselves, and we're very comfortable in our identities and who we are. And I just think not everyone is there, and it takes someone to be at that level to be that comfortable having vulnerable, deep conversations like that, like we are. And and that's okay if people aren't there yet, and everyone's in a different place with figuring themselves out. And not saying that even we've, or at least myself, have come completely into my identity, and I'm not saying that at all, but I feel like the four of us in generally speaking, are very comfortable with who we are as people, and very comfortable being ourselves. And having that definitely gives us an advantage of wanting to take conversations further and ask those deep questions.
Yeah. I like to believe that there's a reason for everything. And so sometimes I tell myself, like, because I've come across this idea before too, that like this same topic, and I thought, like, well, okay, maybe if everybody was like me, the world would be a disaster. Or like, because isn't that kind of funny when we think about like relationships? Like, oh, the ideal person would probably be exactly like me, like, but it's not, and that's maybe why opposites attract, or maybe why opposites work out, or not even always. It's not so black and white. But anyways,
oh, for sure.
Back to the that initial idea though, that like maybe we might be thinkers, we might be more open and deeper or something like that. But you could also say that's relative to just like what our comfort zone is, where we think best and where we express ourselves best,
Oh, okay.
like and that maybe there's like people who aren't as what we might say is deep, but for them maybe the weather can be deep. It's like, wow, look at those clouds, man, like that's so cool. Or look at the way that raindrop just hit that leaf. Did you just see that, dude? Like, oh, like that was so sick. And that's like deep because you're really like going into that nuance of the details of the moment. Or you could do the same thing with skateboarding or any of your passions and interests, and then suddenly now you have a deep topic, but it's really maybe just whatever you're interested in, and you can really only go deep when you both share that interest, maybe. And then that comes back to that idea of relationships, like, oh, if only everybody was just like me, we would all get along. But not really. I'm just kidding. That's not really true.
Because there's probably people, like, I bet you there's a huge field of people who, if they were to listen to our podcast, they're like, why these guys are talking about such trivial stuff,
Yeah,
like there's
that's true.
People out there who go even way deeper than we are, who are like, what are they talking about? They're not even going that deep. That kind of goes back to the very beginning of like, pushing our boundaries of what we think we're capable of. Like,
yeah, dang, that's a good point. Like, what if Carl Jung was listening to this and he's like, man, these guys are freaking
amateurs.
Like,
yeah.
Like,
I mean, granted, we are, but
exactly.
Hey, we're trying.
Yeah,
and I think that's what counts.
Yeah,
we're actually trying.
Yeah, there's this quote. Go for it, Logan.
I was just gonna say, then you got like other people saying like, why aren't they talking about football?
Oh, my God.
Yeah. Logan, I love how to you football is like the epitome of like the lowest of the low
Oh my
topics.
Well, okay, I don't want people to think that that's like exactly what I think. It's just, well, I think that's just something I'm not super
Playing on that
interested in.
stereotype.
but, yeah.
It's funny how like football is like our collective term, like to describe like not fruitful conversation.
I guess that's the number
Yeah, I
one
should have said,
entertainment in America.
Wow.
What's that?
Number one entertainment, I think. Well, probably not number
Yeah.
one, but like I think that's like the typical entertainment these days. Like if you're like a dad and you like get some kids, you're like, dang man, like I just want to watch some football right now. Like, oh, and it gets you excited because even if you're not the athlete, like it gives you a purpose, a drive, a reason to stand behind something, you know. And it's like you get excited for it. You're like, dude, I want my team to win, man. Like they've been doing good all season, or in our case, we're in California, San Diego, so like, or what used to be the Chargers, you know, we're like, dude, they always lose, but come on, Chargers.
Always lose.
You know, like just it gives you a reason to believe in something, and because you know, not much else is out there in your daily life, which is actually such a controversy or a contradiction because there's so much to believe in when you have a family and kids and work. But if you don't,
that's interesting. How you're kind of like you're noticing how none of our conversations like will end up on entertainment.
Oh yeah,
I don't know if that means anything or not, but
yeah,
maybe there's like
I guess it depends on what you mean by entertainment, like in terms of how we'll talk about it, because I have definitely a lot of ideas about entertainment, but it won't be like, oh, did you watch Terrace House last night? You know, like
right.
It's gonna
And
be
that's
more like this show's philosophy is very skewed and promoting materialism.
And I think part of the problem is people choose entertainment over thinking about deeper topics, which is why I think it's easier for people to shy away from deeper conversations or conversations that have deeper topics because it's so much easier to talk about, you know, The Office or the NFL or Olympics.
You could say though that like Jim and Pam's relationship is pretty deep, or like that there's like relationship values in The Office that's like deep, you know. And I think like like same with regard to Terrace House, like the reality TV show. It's like it's almost like interesting, like because we're kind of almost strictly just going in deep, and we're just like running butt naked through a sandstorm, you know, like we're just like in there, man. Like we're just talking about this, and there's no like, whereas okay, so for the rest of the world, they might like think like, oh, I have to have all these other aspects in play, like so it has to be deep, it has to be entertaining, just enough funny and just enough drama and just enough like romance for me to actually like feel like I'm spending my time worthwhile, you know. Like because if we're like, because we're definitely talking about deep topic right now, but like just we're actually talking about the deep topic is talking about a deep topic. That's funny, but you know what I mean? Like it's like we're just going at it raw, you know. We're just like, it doesn't have like, this is entertaining to us, but for some people they might need like extra things to make it entertaining and like to get them involved.
Yeah, you're right. Do you guys know of any drama that's going on that we could fit in the podcast? No, I'm just kidding.
Oh my gosh.
I'm just kidding.
Well,
yeah, we're missing the drama and the romance, so we have to somehow get that in there.
I've never had a real committed relationship longer than a year.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Dang.
It's been hard, man. I could say I'm a really picky guy, but I could also say like all those times just weren't the right ones, you know? Like it's, what do I really say? You know, I don't know. It just didn't work out. It wasn't meant to be, or yeah, was it really meant to be? Probably not. Or am I just really picky?
Oh man, that is a tough one.
Because there's a lot of moments where I could have probably like definitely gone out on dates and had a girlfriend and done stuff, but I didn't like choose that path, like because I saw like I envisioned my future and I just couldn't envision the girl that I was interested in being part of that because of just all this uncertainty. So I'm almost like using uncertainty as an excuse for like, well, if there's no certainty of where things are going to end up, then it's probably not going to work out. Just kind of erring on the side that it's probably not going to work out just because I can't envision what's going to happen. But I think that is life, it's like we never know what's going to happen. And so you just kind of have to do it and go for it and trust that it will work. But then again, now you're like, okay, I can do this with anyone actually, and I can fall in love with anybody. And love is a choice, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree.
And
Logan, what was what you said earlier about life? That was like you could either let life happen to you or you can make it happen.
Dang.
Basically, yeah.
That's
like you can.
Go ahead.
Sorry, it's like you can lead like a passive life where you're just kind of waking up every day and kind of doing the things like in front of you, and whatever happens, like it happens to you, and then you kind of just react to it. Or you can like live a life where you're kind of making life happen the way that you want to, living a life more actively than passively.
Wow, yeah. I
think I got that from like my dad or my uncle or someone.
Yeah. But that kind of goes into what Lawrence is saying, like how it seems like you're kind of going about your relationships just like asking if they're going to work out or not, and you've come to the realization
Passively,
no, love is a choice, and like if you choose to make it happen, you can make it happen. That like fits very well with that quote.
It's interesting though, because in the event that you realize that okay, like I can choose to make this happen with this person or not, like it's entirely in your hands, but then you ask yourself, what do I really want then? Because if I can have a choice, like then you really start questioning yourself and even more than the other person, or maybe you're questioning the other person more than yourself. Actually, I don't know exactly which way it goes. It might depend, but then you're going to be saying, well, like, okay, like if I can make this work now, then, well, dang, like, who can I find then? I guess, I don't know. It becomes even more of a search, which is not entirely always the case. It's just one scenario in the multitude of possibility.
Yeah.
Lawrence, I got a random question for you. Well, it's not that random, I guess. But okay. You could clone your brain.
What's your question?
Put it in a girl's like brain hole, and then like now you have you, but you're a girl.
Oh
Would you pursue a relationship with that person?
Oh my god, dude!
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, I couldn't put up with
I
myself.
don't think I could either.
Yeah. But isn't it weird though? That's a good
thing. Is enough. I couldn't live with
two.
I couldn't live with two of me.
Isn't it weird though? Like we often think that like the person that's most compatible with us is the person that like has the same exact interests or something like that. But I really don't believe that that's part of compatibility at all. Like that might help chemistry a little bit at first, because then you can relate with somebody at first on something, and it's easier to have a conversation. But compatibility is actually like to me so much deeper than just shared interests.
Yeah. I like how you said that. Like I agree. Like having a lot of similarities, like that might benefit you on the first date or the first couple dates, but it's not going to benefit you in the long term, for the rest of your life. And I think like we're not meant to be with someone who's the same as us. We're meant to be with someone who completes us.
Wow. That's gnarly. Yeah, and that's where like the opposites attract thing comes in, because they like fit together. They complete each other's missing pieces.
Right.
That is trippy, dude. I mean, it's weird though, because I've met some pretty selfish like people in my life that I just felt like, yeah, there's no way I'm like gonna keep hanging out with you. Because I've generally considered myself to be kind of selfless. Or, I wanted to mention this earlier. Like, just because you're passive in something doesn't necessarily mean you're being moral. You know, you can be passive thinking that you're being so kind and so generous to the other person, but actually, it's not. It's far from being generous or kind. It's just you're just being passive. You know, so maybe because I almost said that I was selfless, right? But I think we're all selfish to some degree. But I tend to be passive. So somebody who's more active or actively expressive in who they are might come off more selfish. But who am I to judge that person's actually being selfish? Like, why don't I? You know, somebody else who's just as active in their expression might vibe with that person, or maybe they might clash because they're both active. Whereas a passive person might be more absorbing that active person's personality. That's an interesting dynamic I think about sometimes too.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely a balance, because like you do want to find someone who, well, okay, so like I said, like you're not trying to find someone who's the same as you. You're trying to find someone who completes you. But it's figuring out what it means to have someone who completes you. I think that's where there's a lot of confusion and a lot of discrepancy, and that's where the hard questions are, is because, like, you know, what does it even mean to have someone that completes you? And because, you know, you don't know what you don't know, and
yeah, wow,
you don't have the qualities that you don't have, so it's hard to say like what it is. But there's a balance, because like, yeah, when you start identifying differences in, you know, your significant other, I like it's good if, how do I put this? Like you're able to utilize those differences in ways that make you part of a team. Whereas, like I think there is a point where you could have so many differences where it actually negatively impacts the relationship. So there's a balance. You want the right amount of similarities, and you want the right amount of differences, and not even the right amount of differences, but the right kind of differences. So you want the right similarities in one area, and you want the right kind of differences in an area. And yeah, figuring that out is a really tough thing. And unfortunately, I'm no relationship coach or anything, and unfortunately I don't have all the answers, but I do at least know that there is, you do want to find a balance between the kind of similarities you have and the kind of differences you have. And all in all, you want to make sure that the similarities and differences that you have make you a better team and not tear your team apart.
Yeah, wow. Yeah,
because I believe that's the goal of relationships, and more specifically speaking, marriage. Like I believe that marriage is you want to be a team. Like you want to pick someone
exactly
where you and your significant other make a good team. And yeah,
totally.
just like
Yes.
any team, you have different roles and different responsibilities, and but those differences don't necessarily, or might not necessarily, negatively impact the team, you know. Just like how similarities might not negatively impact the team, you need healthy dosage of both.
Huffy
Yeah.
dosage.
So Adam, if we were saying you need a team, that's what you're saying. You're trying to build an effective team. What's the activity
Yes,
that
sir.
your team is performing?
Life, yeah, man. Life, just a team that you could do life with, a team that you could survive with, a team you could manage your finances with,
Manage
a
your
teammate.
happiness with.
Yeah, manage your happiness with, a teammate that you could raise a family with and have children
Okay.
with, and a teammate that you could grow old with. And yeah, I think ultimately, like, if marriage is your goal, you should be looking for a teammate that you could do the rest of your life with.
Okay.
And grow old together and learn together and grow together. And in one of our first episodes, I mentioned, like, I believe the purpose of life is to learn and grow. Very, very simple sentence, very, very complex idea to actually carry out in reality. But I think, if the purpose of life is to learn and to grow, then the purpose of relationships and seeking out someone to marry should be finding a teammate that you are compatible to learn and grow with together for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And when you're willing to make the choice and carry out the actions and the duty to carry that out with someone for the rest of your life, that's what I call love.
Oh. So you do believe that love is a choice?
Oh yes, I wholeheartedly agree with what Lawrence said.
Yeah.
In a
Oh.
Sorry, I'm gonna fall back on my Christian beliefs here once again.
Oh.
I know I do that often, but there's a verse in 1 Corinthians in the Bible. I think it's 1 Corinthians 13.
What is love?
Verses. Yeah, it's
Baby, don't
love is
hurt
patient,
me.
love is kind. It does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud, it does not dishonor others, it is not self-seeking, it is not easily angered, it keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always hopes, always perseveres. Always trusts. Love never fails. And so in those few verses, never once is love described as a feeling.
Oh, I see.
It's always described as an action. It's a verb. Love is a verb. There's actually a book called Love is a Verb.
Oh, that makes sense. I'll make one called Love is a Noun, or yeah.
It's by John Mayer.
John who?
John Mayer.
Guitar player.
Oh, what the heck?
I don't think it's that John Mayer.
Oh.
Oh wait, hold on.
I think you're right.
Sorry. I was looking at this. I accidentally searched the song "Love Is a Verb." The book "Love Is a Verb" is by Gary Chapman.
Oh my god!
My bad. That was really funny.
Yeah.
Not the song "Love Is a Verb." The book "Love Is a Verb" by Gary Chapman.
Okay. Interesting.
I will say though that I feel like love is a feeling, but I think when you said that, you meant more that love is not an emotion per se. But because I feel like when I read that, like it's like believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things, does not envy. Like love is long, love suffers long and is kind. when I feel like when okay, so maybe this is actually where I could be wrong. Is like being kind and not envying somebody. You can do that unconsciously. You know, you can do that like just naturally. Like, oh, what? I wasn't even thinking of that.
Well, right, but it's
Uh,
still an action, right? Like you're still being kind, whether you're doing
Yeah.
it consciously or
and
being
then
kind is a verb, and being
Totally.
and not being is also a verb.
But then I guess once you're aware of it, maybe you could think of how it feels to be kind, right? Or you could think of what it feels like to not envy or parade yourself or to not be puffed up. You know, that is also a feeling, you know, like maybe like, so then maybe love is a feeling, you know, because it's all these things that you're doing, and everything we do in life does have like a feeling based on memories and perception, or perception and memories like offer or contribute to what love might feel like if all these components were in place. But maybe none of those are necessarily, or you know, maybe love is not a feeling though. Maybe it's like the epitome of
maybe
certain feelings. I don't know, or like experiences.
Yeah, well, I think we're both kind of on the same page here, because I was going to say, like, maybe what people... Hold on, let me think about how to phrase this before I say it. Maybe the feelings that people associate with love is the result of love in action.
Yeah, totally.
I think I'll go with that. I'll land on that answer for now.
I like that. Yeah, exactly. And then like, because you know, to hinge off that, it's like if you were to just base it off the feelings, which is kind of where I was going with the premise of just maybe thinking that when you said love is not a feeling, that it's not an emotion, because emotions are always changing or feelings are always changing, that this has less substance than the very things that initiate or stimulate those feelings. So the very things that stimulate those feelings require action. They require thought, belief, and conviction and faith. And those are all things that will like initiate or bring about experiences and actions that construct these feelings that we can call love or something like that. Sorry, that was probably way more intellectual than it needed to be.
Hey, no, there's no such thing. That was the perfect amount of You can never be too intellectual around the bonfire, Lawrence.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it'll all go into the refiner's fire. But I found that Titus quote earlier that I wanted to mention earlier. It's Titus 3:9, and it says, well, the prior verse is, "This faithful saying and these things I want you to affirm constantly, that those who have believed in God should be careful to maintain good works. These things are good and profitable to men. But avoid foolish disputes, genealogies, and contentions and strivings about the law, for they are unprofitable and useless." So I guess that's about the law, but
well, yeah. So Paul is writing this because I guess this church that Titus was overseeing, they were arguing a lot about old Jewish customs, which had nothing to do with the gospel.
Wow.
And I think that's where this verse comes in, is people were being divided within the church because they were arguing about controversial issues over Jewish customs, and that's not what the gospel is about. And so he's tending to those matters. But I don't think you're wrong in the fact that you could take that verse and kind of expand it further to kind of just a broad meaning of saying like,
Yeah, like
you know,
other controversial.
it's not about arguing about, the origins of the universe or the origins of species, and
Yeah.
it's like what you said. It's about love and faith and loving each other and
Yeah. Yeah, actually
pursuing truth.
on that note too, like I think that's a good place to bring up how, because we were talking about relationships earlier, like how it's very common and very often a constant battle and a constant obstacle to overcome the need to be right versus just sacrificing that for the sake of maintaining the relationship itself, and how the
Yes,
balance
preacher,
between
brother.
that is just, man, what a battle. Like I can't even imagine, like, because we go through that in every single relationship, not just like lover type relationships, but friendships and parents and like stuff like that, like we all like have to go through that, like at what point am I willing to say like, okay, I don't care so much about being right as I care about being your friend.
If we had an adapter.
Right.
But I don't know. That's like, but there is a point though, right, where you have to say, okay, being right and accurate is very important if this relationship's going to move forward, which is like super like hard to decide, because like at that point, like we'll start implementing everything that we were talking about, about like interests, love, and how all that comes into play in terms of the team that we're building, for success.
Yeah, and there's definitely fundamental beliefs and doctrines you have to agree on in order for a fruitful relationship to occur.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. If you're not yoked.
Yes, yoked equally. Yeah, dude, you know.
say yoked?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a verse in the Bible that talks about. There's a couple verses actually. It's
Maybe
not
tell
just
them what a
one.
yoke is first.
Yeah. So Andy, a yoke is the harness that you put on an ox when driving plows in a farmer's field or something of the like. And so the yoke is the part that goes around like their neck or their body. It's just a little harness that they pull on when you're dragging a plow through the ground.
I think there's usually two of them, right? Like a space for two
Yeah.
oxes.
Yeah. So yeah, usually a yoke is the harness, and there's two loops where their necks go, and one loop is for one ox and a second loop is for the other ox, and they're side by side. And so the Bible kind of uses that concept to paint a picture of marriage, of you're plowing this field side by side with each other like oxen, and there's a couple verses in the Bible in several of the letters that Paul writes about being what he calls being equally yoked with your spouse, meaning in this case, like spiritually, you're both of a similar spiritual maturity before entering a covenant marriage relationship. But that's kind of what Lawrence was referring to of the yoke. You want to be equally yoked with your partner.
Yeah.
You don't want to be unequally yoked. Yeah, you want to be equally yoked.
That is interesting, actually.
If you're not equally yoked, someone's going to be doing all the work.
True.
And then someone else is just going to be taking all the credit, or
one of the oxes is going to get tired, and then that's when the moment calls for the other ox, but that's when all the problems come up. And and then I guess whether you can get through that imbalance is up to the two people involved.
Yes.
because I would say like maybe we could challenge that idea and say like, okay, like we don't have to be like so dogmatic to say that it has to be equal, because what's to say like we're all equally yoked in any way or form, and to be able to, you know, quantify that in order to determine it is like, whoa, like, okay, now I have to question your faith, but there's some faith involved in our yoking with another, right? Where I have faith that this person, I'm equally yoked with him or her, you know, which is kind of interesting actually. And so maybe it doesn't have to necessarily be like a equally yoked in terms of a quantifiable manner through action or thought or belief, but well, maybe belief. Yeah, there's probably some fundamental layer where the line is drawn, but
well, I believe like if you're unequally yoked, you're going to find out pretty quickly.
Yeah,
or at least
it'll be apparent
within the first couple months of dating. If you are unequally yoked, like you'll know when you're unequally yoked.
Dang, you'll know when you're in love.
Yeah, I think so. This answers my question too. That's why I was like kind of surprised at why you're saying yoked. But yeah, I looked up yoked and that's what I found.
Like buff.
Oh, this picture.
Oh, like a super buff
What yoked is?
Yoked.
Oh my
Yeah,
god! You want to be yoked.
Yeah, definitely want to be yoked
sure.
in a relationship. Want to be equally
buff.
I saw that too. Yeah.
Oh my gosh!
Yo, look up oxen yoke.
I'm almost willing to say though that like honestly, because we were talking about this earlier too, about I think like uncertainty. Maybe we brought up some notes about that, and also I guess faith. All this, I like how life just seems to kind of like have common threads, like you can just always come back to. But basically though, like, you know, when you mentioned, Adam, like how you'll know when somebody is yoked with you or not, or like I said, like you'll know when you're in love. You know, I feel like this is just my like speculation, but like I feel like you will never really know, like just like we'll never really know who we are, you know. Like who am I, like what am I really, like, and we're always changing. And I think like the challenges of relationships is when we assume that the other person won't change. You know, we assume that we meet this person and that who they are, that we met them today, is who they'll always be for the rest of their life. But it's like, no, like, I mean, sure, maybe we could argue against that and say there's people who don't change actually, but to some fundamental degree, there is some type of change that happens, whether it be through your looks or through your habits or through your drive in life, your energy levels. Some type of change happens that can alter the dynamics of any type of relationship.
And I think for me, I'm banking on that because I come from a mindset of, you know, if like the purpose of life is to learn and grow, you know, you're going to be different 10 years, 20 years, 50 years down the line than you are now. And, you know, I would count that as a failure if I was exactly the same, just either in life or in a relationship. I was exactly the same 10, 20, 50 years down the line as I am right now. I would be ashamed of that. Like I would count that as a failure. Like I don't want to be the same. I hope I change, you know, for the better, and I hope that I'm different, and I would expect that you know, who I marry is also going to change with me and grow with me. And
exactly.
Yeah.
I think that's the number one thing is like growing together. You know, that's really the willingness of any relationship, is that like, hey, like even if nothing's perfect, because also guess what, nothing will ever be perfect. And even when we grow and get closer towards achieving most of our goals in the future, we'll have more goals to create, and we'll also be just as imperfect in those ways. And as much as we could try to become perfect, like we'll never be perfect. And I think that is the fundamental crux of life, that is what plagues us, but it's also what inspires us and pushes us beyond our wildest dreams and our boundaries, and reminds us that we're still alive. Because the moment you're stagnant is the moment you're actually dead. Like, yeah.
And that's, yeah, I totally agree. I agree with everything you said. Like, yeah, that was gold right there. But that's also why I think it's dangerous to date someone just specifically because they're similar to you. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with dating someone who's similar to you or has a lot of the same.
Nobody's
like,
ever perfectly similar.
Right, no one's ever perfectly similar, but like there's nothing wrong with dating someone because they're very, very similar to you are. But I think the dangers in that are if you're dating someone solely because they're similar to you, I think that might be a problem because people do change and people do grow and are different as time progresses. And if you're dating someone because they're similar to you, sure, they might be similar to you right now. But there's going to be a day when you wake up and things are going to be different and you're going to be like, what the heck happened? We were so happy earlier and we agreed on everything and everything was so similar. And then now, like,
that's true.
What the heck? Things are different now and I feel very uncomfortable in this relationship. And that's where like the joy of dating someone who has maybe some similarities to you, so you could at least like agree on the important stuff, but also like a lot of differences. Like you could use those to your advantage as you're growing and learning together. And when you have the expectation of like, yeah, we are very different people, but we know how to utilize that, you're gonna grow way farther together as a team that way. And yeah, that was just one thought that came to mind.
Yeah. I actually wanted to mention real quick too, like that I read an article once about like the longest lasting relationships in life, and like it was like a article where somebody was interviewing all these different people who had like, I think like 30 or 40 plus year relationships, and they all basically there's like a list of 10 things, but the one thing that really stood out to me was there's this general consensus that they all had shared a deep respect for each other. And I think that like, and there's even a part where I read that they said like love will come and go, love will fade, but what remained at the end of the day was their respect for each other that really kept the relationship together. And I think to me that represents a deeper type of love than just like, for example, the shallower type of love that we could say is maybe romance.
Right. That's so awesome. And I believe that to be true wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
Sorry, Logan. I think you might have you went somewhere, right? Or I don't know. Or sorry, we've been excluding you, bro.
No, it's the natural way of things.
Cool.
I feel like everyone tends to just chime in when they feel like they have something to input. I agree with what you guys were saying. I do believe that you need respect in a relationship, and I also, when you guys mentioned about like the concept of maybe you're dating someone similar to you, and then they change, and you like wake up one day and think about how they've changed. I was just trying to, there's probably a good word for this, but I was trying to see if that was like compatible with what happened in my life with my like last relationship, because I feel like it was possibly like that. Like it felt like we were super similar, and then eventually, like there are definitely a lot of things where we grew apart, and then at one point there was some kind of breaking point where it wasn't worth it for the other party to, continue the, staying together. And that's a hard thing to accept when it happens. But Yeah, and you never really know like why something ends, or like it's hard to know for sure, and that's a thing that I think you might have to like get past at certain points in your life. Like, I don't know, the need for closure or something, like it's not always possible. Yeah.
That's actually a really good point. I heard too once that you don't always need the other person to find closure either,
Yeah.
which I kind of like that idea too.
You don't need the other person to?
Yeah, you don't need the other person to find closure. It's really something within yourself that you find. And I think talking with the other person can help, but you could probably talk to them to the end of the time and still never find closure. But really, it's something that you come to terms with within yourself more than anything.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting.
But wow, yeah, that's I think
Yeah.
that is gnarly though.
It is. Hey Andy, have you had any like thoughts hit you throughout this this talk? Just like with your past and your life, and like, I don't know, things that have happened, or yeah, just like where does your mind wander to in this?
I don't know. I've actually kind of just avoided thinking about that kind of stuff, and I've gotten very used to doing that. So tuned out a little bit of what we've been talking about.
What?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm just
I'm a
kidding.
little distracted, to be honest, but
It's okay.
if you want me to, just what were you just talking about?
Well, I'm curious, as I was gonna actually ask, like, why you've like blocked out thinking about that.
Yeah. Yeah, like why have you chosen not to think of that?
It's, I guess, it's kind of lazy. Maybe lazy is not the best word, but it seems to work for me, and it's kind of like a temporary fix until I can think of a better way to cope with it. But as of now, it's like kind of the one thing that seems to be working. So maybe that is lazy. I guess that's kind of what laziness is just stopping at a certain point. But that's the answer, Adam. I'm lazy, all right?
Yeah, it's all good.
Okay.
I think
Yeah, but
I mean, I didn't have anything wrong
oh, okay, yeah.
with that. I was just curious.
No, that's just.
I wasn't trying to pick a fight or nothing.
Oh yeah, no. I didn't think you were.
put them up.
Oh yeah, stick them up, Adam, or put them up. I still don't know which one is which.
Raise the roof.
Oh yeah.
I'm just kidding. I don't know. But yeah, I think like that's actually an interesting point. Like just to kind of try to derive meaning from that. I feel like sometimes there's definitely like times in our life where like things happen in our past and we just cannot make sense of it no matter how much, you know, and sometimes really just ignoring it or like moving on and just kind of like just choosing not to think about it, because sometimes sometimes we don't need to think about everything in life, you know. I think that maybe ties back to the deep topic sometimes, you know. So there's some deep topics out there that just like not everybody needs to think about, and that's where like everything has a purpose in life. Like everybody, there's a time and place for everything, and there's a person in a certain place for everyone, you know. Like we're all like in our moments with our interests and our ways of thinking and dealing with life and coping with stress, like for a reason, you know. Like we're all here like doing life the way we need to do it in order to ensure that we're doing our best. You know, this is what's going to bring the best out of me in my life, and this was what works for me, you know. And as long as I do what works for me, that's going to allow me to like be my best self for the world to help people, because ultimately I think if not most, I think, or if not all, most people want to help other people in the world, because that's what gives us all a sense of meaning and purpose, and feel like we're not just useless,
Yes.
that there is meaning in our lives. And not to say like you're in that situation, Andy, but sorry, that was a really macro level thing, but maybe,
okay.
yeah, just like everybody in life doesn't need to think about, sometimes we just can't figure out certain things in our lives, and sometimes it's just not worth dwelling on.
That's very true. And I think you do have to look at the macro level of that, like analyze it at that level. Just because, well, I think if you just look at yourself.
Oh, that is true.
Yeah, if you just kind of look at your situation, that I think you just end up going in circles and thinking about the same stuff. So, I think.
Yeah, obsessing on the details that are like infinitely imaginable.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
so that's what kind of scares me, is like I could just be in my head forever and never really get anywhere.
Wow.
So that's why I try to not think about it, because that's being in my head, is what I call being in my head. So
dang, yeah,
it's been helpful so far.
That's gnarly.
Oh,
dude.
yeah. It's just
That is.
when they say like don't think about it kind of thing. That's mentality.
Yeah, for real. Just do it.
Yeah.
Yesterday, you said
Oh,
tomorrow.
yeah.
Let your dreams be dreams.
Yeah.
How
Wherever
long-
you are, Shia.
How long ago was that?
And probably
like 2008 or 9.
not that old. No, I thought it was like 2016 or 2015.
Yeah, it was in the teens.
Dang, huh? When we were teens. Like 2010 or 2011.
Because I don't think I remember that in high school. I don't know.
It's definitely in high school, man.
You remember that in high school? The just do it?
That's what I thought. Yeah. I thought it was like when I was like in 11th grade or.
I was a sophomore in college when this came out, actually.
What? No way. It's that new?
What year did you graduate high school, Lawrence?
2012 or 2013.
Oh, yeah. So you would have been going into your junior year.
Of college?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's so
Dang.
late.
Yeah, that is.
That's my time scale, my mental, what do you call it? What's the word for it? Starts with a C. My mental chronological like time frame is messed up. My chronological time frame is messed up.
That's all right.
Shia LaBeouf, what's that guy up to these days?
Yeah.
Oh, well, did you see his movie, Peanut Butter Falcon? No. That was actually a really good movie. For anyone listening, if you've never seen Peanut Butter Falcon, go home and watch it right now. It's a really good movie.
I should watch that. I don't watch movies actually a lot. I watch a lot of TV shows.
Do you have to like peanut butter to like the movie? Because I'm not a huge peanut butter fan.
Oh.
Yeah.
That break your heart, hearing he doesn't like peanut butter?
Oh.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I'm just kidding. I was teasing him.
I didn't know that about you, Logan.
But
yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's gnarly. Yeah, that is gnarly.
Yeah, I don't really like peanut butter.
Wow.
I was saying it
But
though
what if you
because
eat it?
I'm just wondering if the movie is like really relevant to like enjoying peanut butter.
Peanut Butter Falcon. Oh my gosh. He either delivers it or it's a Peanut Butter Falcon.
Yeah.
But it has Shia LaBeouf, so
Okay.
Yeah, it's probably a peanut butter falcon.
Yeah. Yeah, Adam, any hints?
Oh, sorry, I had tapped out for a second. I was listening to "Just Do It" by Shia LaBeouf.
Oh my gosh.
August
You know,
31st, 2015 is when that was
Oh.
published.
Wow.
Okay,
Crazy,
yeah, I knew
man.
it was like not
That
that
is-
long ago.
Way too soon ago.
Yeah.
Too recent.
Yeah, man. I feel like that was. I remember that meme as like high school meme for some reason.
Wow.
Jeez. But he's got this new product called the Loofah LaBeouf.
Really?
Loofah LaBeouf. Yeah. I'm just kidding. The Loofah LaShia. I was trying to just do a play on words.
I don't know what loofah is. So. Loofah.
Oh, loofah, like a scrub, a sponge scrub. It's like a natural sponge
Oh.
scrub. You can grow it.
Loofah.
It's weird.
People use it in
And
the
I think-
shower.
LOOFAH.
Loofah.
Loofah. Or wait, it's a vegetable, and it's also spelled LUFFA. Loofah. Loofah. But yeah, it's a vegetable. It's in the cucumber family. That's what I think is so trippy about loofahs. It's like, whoa, you can grow them? Like, what the heck? It does not look like something you can grow.
Jeez.
But it's a natural scrub. It's better than like plastic scrubs scrub towels to like get off the exfoliate the skin, you know? Like loofahs are a little bit more sustainable, environmentally friendly.
Yeah.
It's just that name. That name, yeah. Yeah, if you say the joke, I think that's a very good joke. Because of the name.
Monkey D. Loofah.
Wait, what was the first one you said about Shia LaLufa or something?
Yeah, Loofah LaBeouf.
Oh.
Or Loofah LaShia.
Yeah.
Isn't that like a butter?
It's great.
Shia butter.
Oh, shea butter?
Yeah,
Oh,
shea
yeah.
butter, yeah. Shia butter. Oh, dude, we got Shia butter and Loofah LaBeouf, and I think we're about to help
Yeah, I think so.
be marketers for Shia
Get his
LaBeouf
career
here.
back on track. Well, apparently he's back on track with peanut butter butterfly. Whatever it's called. That's one.
Peanut butter falcon.
Peanut butter falcon. Oh my gosh.
Peanut butterfly? Yeah.
All right, now we need to get our loofahs and our
Sit
shea
in the
butter.
theater, just hey, come, market our product.
Sorry, there's no showers
Oh,
in
yeah.
the theater. Wait, is shea butter a shower product?
I have no idea.
Oh, it's
People
food.
use anything to do anything now. Yeah,
For
It's
real.
like shower
huh?
products are made out of.
Shea butter is
Okay.
a fat extracted from the nut of the African shea tree. Wow.
What?
You're right, though. It's probably in some hair products. That's
They
what I
probably
was
have, like, a whole
initially thinking.
shampoo line. Shia shampoo.
Yeah.
Shia
Shea
butter.
Shia.
Shia shampoo.
Shea butter shampoo. And then just his abs, like, bam.
His abs?
Doesn't matter how irrelevant it is. It's just how relevant it is. It's just Shia butter. Abs. Boom.
Yeah.
$1 million right there, man.
Yeah. Just do it.
Oh yeah.
But Nike already has that, so
We should, dude. We should do that.
Oh, you're saying that's
Yeah.
his like catchphrase?
Hit up Shia. We should actually like hit him up on Twitter and just be like, "Yo, man, we got some ideas for you, man. What do you think?" Lufa LaBeouf.
I'll get some passive income.
Lufa LaBeouf. I like that actually because it sounds more like it.
Oh my gosh.
Lufa LaBeouf.
We call him up. He's like, "Yeah, I heard you guys on that podcast. I already started my business."
Oh my gosh. We're going to have to sue him then.
Yeah. For Shia LaBeouf, we've already trademarked.
The posting of this podcast, we are patenting
that went from
idea.
Like wanting a full-on partnership with him to taking him to court if he
suing him. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, Shia?
Just do it.
I'm getting his name mixed up now.
Yeah, Shia.
Yeah, Shia.
Shia butter.
Shia.
Chia.
We are Siamese. Shea butter, if you please.
Dang.
Lufa.
How often do you just kind of do that, Lawrence? Just do like wordplay and all that crazy. Craziness? That's awesome.
Dang, almost like every day. Man, because I like to write poetry, so I'm always like trying to figure out how to like use words. Or I'll like make connections in my head between multiple words just naturally because I'm just like, oh, like that rhymes or that sounds like this word. And
that's really cool. Yeah, I've been getting into, I don't know if I have been getting into, but I'm gaining an appreciation for anything like improv. So like comedy or acting. I haven't done any.
Wow.
So I don't know how I would be, but just listening to comedians. So that's pretty cool. I think poetry is similar.
Yeah.
Do you do like the improvised poetry?
Kind of. I mean, well, not really. Like, but I am like a freestyle artist, so I'll play guitar and freestyle lyrics. But most of that is like a super like developed not complex, but just like a super developed version of just all these lyrics that have come up over the years. So for example, like when I'm freestyling, I like to talk about time, and I know time rhymes with mind, and time, mind, inside, confide, rely, divide, rhyme, and just all these different words that like rhyme. And it's like it all just comes together like in like it's the weirdest thing to me. Like I'll have like a word that I want to rhyme already, but what I say between those two words is like up to interpretation and like is the journey itself. So that's where things get kind of crazy and difficult because you'll start mumbling and just messing up big time. But then like you can go back if you're recording, and because you generally know what you wanted to say but you didn't get it out, so then you can go back and fix it and make a song. Or you just get really good at it, like, or you learn crutch lines. Like one of my like crutch lines is like
okay.
Well, I don't know if I want to tell it well, I've told people before, so but it's my mind inside the time of which I live, and all that I so dearly try to give, so it all just goes away on down and through into this long cellar dark and drain. So that's kind of like a sad line, but that was like representative of like the dark years that I was going through in high school. And I'll just use that a lot, I'll say that, and then that gives me some time to like think of other things. Or like when I really get into things is when I'm living the thing that I'm imagining. So like if I'm imagining something, I'm actually there, like running through a forest and like looking for a treasure. And then I'm running so fast looking for this treasure through this forest that like I run out past the forest edge, almost falling off a cliff. And I'm just staring out over the edge down into the ocean where the waves are just crashing on the jagged rocks, and I'll like have that image in my mind. and I'll be singing about how that feels to be there and what's going through my mind, and maybe the lover that I'm thinking of, like in that moment of solitude, and like just all this emotion just really starts building up from that imagery and that imagination, and just believing that I'm the hero in that story, or that I'm the main character of that world that's in my mind. And suddenly it's so real that like there's like no divide between who you are and where you are there, and your ability to talk about it.
That's impressive.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that was like kind of a cool way of like describing it, but it's probably like, well, I don't know. It is crazy. It's cool. Yeah, I'll say like to the very least, it feels like you're actually there. Like to simplify it, but yeah, it's like fun. It's totally something anybody can do. You know, like because what I like to think is like everybody can do anything. Like it just takes practice. There are some things though that, for example, like other people are just naturally better at than others. But yeah, I think anybody can just pause for a moment, you know, and think and just reflect with their imagination, and just start imagining a world, you know, like, dang, like what do I envision? You know, you might envision like, so I'm just like
Good.
I don't mean to label you or confine you, but I'm thinking, oh, you're a computer guy, so you might envision like a futuristic world where there's like high tech infrastructure or something like that. Or you could maybe take, and then it's all to your heart's desires. You know, you can take yourself to like Renaissance times, or like, you know, or even become an animal. Like I'm a cheetah, like running through the forest. I would never like done that before, but you can imagine the speed though, or like how it feels to be that swift creature, and that the power within that is contained within you through the capability of your imagination.
I'm gonna give that a try. So for you, it comes out in poetry, or
Definitely.
that's like your medium for expressing that. Okay.
Yeah, like I think poetry's helped me conjure words, and think about things, and I guess kind of conjure the world inside my mind. But also, freestyling is where I really came across that. Well, actually, never mind. Because when I write poetry too, sometimes I get captivated in this imagery in my head that really comes to life.
Okay.
And suddenly, like the words just fall right under the page or into my phone. And then so the same thing happens with freestyling too. It is kind of like I think that is the creative process. Like you just eventually get into this flow state. But there's a lot of days where you'll try, and it's just totally just tripping. You're just tripping on yourself the entire time. Like, oh my gosh, like I don't feel it today, or what do I even say? But in those moments that you say, what do I even say, or question yourself, like that's the moment when you act and you just keep going forward, that suddenly something happens. And so that's where believing in yourself, or not even just believing in yourself, feeling like it's some big task, but like just taking that leap of faith, even if it sucks at first, you know, like eventually you just get better at expressing yourself or thinking in that mode. And the cool thing too is there's all different kinds of exercises
Really?
or methods to kind of get to that place. I would say like just naturally doing it, just stabbing at it. So if you're like a poet, or if you want to do improv, just start doing it. Like just do it. Like literally that is the thing, because then you'll just naturally come up with ways that it works for you. And you might question yourself, because you might be like, oh, in relationship to all these pros, like they're not doing it that way, or it sure doesn't look like they do it that way. But maybe they're so developed in their craft that it just looks seamless or flawless. But really, everybody has to start somewhere. And also, what I like about Eastern philosophy is this concept of there's no way. Like no way is the way. Because the moment you think there is some kind of way or method, I guess, and this is contradicting what I just said about methods of getting there, but when you realize that there is no way to get there, then you realize like anything you do from here is game. Yeah. I think that's like really motivating and inspiring, because it's like, dang, like for the longest time, like I've not been a great at music theory, and I'm not very orthodox in my playing style. And when I sing and play guitar at the same time, I don't do chords as much, and my harmonies aren't as in the formation of Western style. I have a lot of droning notes in my guitar playing, and so it sounds very unattractive to me because it doesn't sound like most music. But I know that like me pursuing that for so long now has gotten me to a place that where I don't sound like anybody else that I've heard of before. Or I mean, I might have similarities because I do have influences, but generally speaking, I don't play like typical guitar players do, I believe. Yeah, my approach has become kind of different, or at least my sound and style has, because I've stuck with that for so long in my unorthodox approach. And then you eventually lead to creating something that nobody's ever created before, or, and just trusting the process.
Yeah, I think self-taught craftsman or craftsmanship is its own like brand sometimes. It's not like fitting into, so that's cool.
Yeah, totally. I will say though, as somebody who like has spent some time being self-taught, like that, there is that idea too, though, that it's like you could spend decades figuring out this one idea that you could have spent like minutes researching on Google or something, and then your expression would have soared. But then again, though, you could have learned that one concept in 5 minutes, but you might never spend the same amount of years that you would have spent playing that one concept, trying to figure out exactly how to get there, or how to relish or flesh out everything from that one concept, And that's something I noticed definitely for sure. Like a lot of people who go to school for music, like they might spend a lot of time like going through the breadth of all the literature that and curriculum that exists, but not like, for example, like a lot of people, they're like, oh, I'm on to the next exotic scale. I'm like learning harmonic minor and melodic minor and the whole tone scale. But I'm like, but how much time have you spent in relationship to those scales in the major scale, or the minor scale? And so some people think like, oh, I need the next exotic scale to make my playing better. But because that's where really I'm at. I've only learned like the major and minor scale patterns, and I know the harmonic minor and I know how to play the melodic minor, but the majority of my 13 years of guitar playing has mostly been in a diatonic setting, and so not even outside of the key as much. And I think that's like been limiting in my creativity and what things I've come across. But I've also like, sure, I could see that as a negative and a downfall on my part, but at the same time, I see it as a benefit because I've also spent just as much time playing in it and trying to flesh out and relish everything I can in those scales, which can be overlooked if you have all the scales available to you at the get-go.
I'm drawing some parallels with, I guess, my experience with software development. Yeah, they really do teach you a lot of things, but they don't spend a lot of time. This is just like in college, they would teach you a lot of things, but you'd maybe learn it, or you'd work with it for like 2 weeks, and then you kind of forget about it, but you still tell people. You get to tell people you know about it, but you kind of only known about it for 2 weeks, and then you go and try to use it, and you just kind of don't know how to use it again. Or it's weird. It's like you kind of like what you're saying is like you're exposed to it, but you don't have that investment that you would if you did it yourself or did a like really similar version yourself.
Yeah, you like might learn slower, but you're spending those months like almost like taking ownership of that.
And
piece
sometimes
of knowledge
you come up with
now obtained
something that's like just tailored to your style. In my case, I've done a lot of that kind of stuff where I'll go build something.
Yeah.
And then I realize I just call it like the wheel has already been invented. So like it just, I will be reinventing the wheel a lot of times, but I don't really see that as such a bad thing anymore, just because your understanding of it of the wheel you just created, it might be like functionally the same as the other ones, but you at least understand exactly how this works because you built it from the ground up. And I think I want to say that's true with people's understandings of music or like their instrument. But I don't know. I haven't really.
Oh, yeah. Like, what if they just approached it without knowing any Western music theory and then just like looked at it and just said, okay, that's a note. And sure, maybe it's designed based off of Western music theory. So maybe there might be some like run-ins that are eventual, correlations or parallels to Western music. But to actually figure it out on your own, like based on just your memory of music you'll probably like come across like techniques and music theory and harmony that college students would be like, oh, that's like advanced harmony, dude. And they'd be like, oh, you're so lame, dude. You don't even know what you just did. Like that was like that is like definitely a controversy or like a kind of a downfall in the culture of music theory, I feel like. But it's poor for me to say that coming from being somebody that doesn't come from that educated background. But it does seem that like it doesn't make sense to put somebody down for not knowing theory to some extent, especially in an advanced degree. Because like when you look at some of the most creative artists, like you can almost debate like at what point is my creativity requiring this theory. Really the theory just explains what you just did, but if you're smart enough to remember what you did in your creative process, you might not need theory in order to repeat it again. And then even if you don't repeat it again, that takes a great level of confidence and comfortability with yourself that you may never achieve that same sound again. And that comes with the joy of music and the fleeting passing of existence that is unattainable. That's like the fear of death at its core. We're always just trying to hold on so dearly for life that we choke it to death. We're holding on to life so hard that we're choking it to death.
Yeah.
But then when we let go, it just like expresses itself. Whoops, sorry, I hit the mic cord. But it just expresses itself. I think that's like I got that from Eastern philosophy too. Like, just makes sense, but it's so like against our nature. It does seem that it's like, okay, I'm not just gonna let myself die. Like I'm definitely not gonna like walk outside my house with my eyes closed and like just take me and like risk getting hit by a car, or like like I'm definitely gonna want to survive to an extent. But there is that weird dynamic that like. The fact that I'm holding on is actually stopping me from doing so much more.
Is that like the guy who, it's just like a fictional thing. I don't know if people do this, but the guy who's like, I don't want to die, so I'm just going to be in a steel box for the rest of my life and just doesn't do anything, but he's safe.
Whoa. Dang.
Okay.
Wow. Yeah. Exactly, yeah, because there's no freedom and expression.
I'd say that's true,
like,
even on
kind of
just
life is that.
And I guess now here we are coming back, completing a circle that we started earlier. But being vulnerable is like you sometimes can't express yourself in a creative way,
dude,
just because you don't want to get ashamed or whatever. So that's
yeah.
Kind of curious, Logan. But would you consider yourself like a classically trained musician, or I won't even know about classically trained, but like trained musician at this point?
That's a good question. Dang. I guess like beginning was like traditionally trained. Trombone player. Yeah, I mean, starting in middle school, then I got private lessons throughout the years, and then like 1 year of college. And then after that, I just kind of I've been doing my own thing. Well, I've been joining like groups, and I utilize the skills that I learned in those, like throughout the school years, and I've like built upon them to be able to play in certain professional like environments, classical or whatever. But then there's other aspects of my playing that were more like I had to come to them myself. Like one trait that I highly value that was never taught in school was my ability to learn by ear. And that's just something that, like, to me, it mattered a lot. And I remember beginning trombone like with Adam, and I think we both kind of like inspired each other in that way, because it would just be fun to like think of a song we know and then like start to just think of what the pitches are, and then slowly and surely figure out, okay, it starts on a B flat, then it goes down by a fifth. We didn't even know what like how to name intervals at the beginning, but you can hear intervals, and then before you know it, we were like playing a song that we never read the music for, but we figured it out by ear. And then that skill on my own and like with friends has been honed all the way up until this point, where like I was actually thinking about it the other day. It's kind of like a part of my daily thought patterns. I'll have a song that's stuck in my head, and I'll be thinking of the intervals in like my kind of like subconsciously. I'm like using my fingers, like tapping on something, and I'm doing like the fingering patterns for like a euphonium, which translate to trombone slide positions. And so like mentally, like those intervals are like ingrained in me so much that I can usually learn things. Like I can hear something one time and play it if it's like not incredibly fast. If it's really fast, past a certain threshold, then I need to slow it down and work it into my muscle memory before playing it. But yeah, that whole part of my playing, it benefited me in the reggae band I'm in, because they just sent me recordings of music. And I learned them all by ear. And that's like, it felt really cool to actually be able to apply that. And then the first time I showed up for a rehearsal, I knew the songs as well as I had to know them. And like my goal at that point was to come in without sounding like I was a new member. And I feel like I had a different tone and stuff than the last guy, but I played all the right music. So yeah, I guess I do.
That's impressive.
I don't know.
Seriously.
Thanks. I don't know. Classically trained, personally trained. It's definitely a combination of both, I would say.
Oh. Go ahead, Lawrence.
Wow, and that actually, go for it. I was gonna say like that relates to like what we were talking about with the freestyling and the poetry, like how I'll just think of wordplay, like words constantly, but
okay.
instead Logan's like thinking like, oh, like intervals.
Oh yeah.
I feel like the more you do something though, then naturally your brain is just naturally working in that mode.
Yeah, it's interesting because in the last few years I've picked up random instruments, because I used to just label myself as trombonist, not musician. So I just thought, I'll just play trombone, or maybe low brass instruments, but I'll be trombone number one. But then I started like picking up guitar, and then kind of randomly picked up the flute. And I'm not claiming to be great at those, but I realized that I was able to learn things by ear still like pretty quickly, even though I wasn't amazing at the instrument. And it's like those, just I guess maybe the intervals that are going on in my brain, like whatever is going on in my brain, like it works throughout like all instruments, as long as I have some kind of rudimentary understanding of how the instrument works.
Wow. Yeah, man, that's so cool. I really want to work on my ear training more. It's funny, dude. There's like so much stuff I want to work on in life. I'm just like, dude, I want to learn Japanese. I want to like do better ear training, or I want to like, learn a lot more rock songs that I never learned. And here I am like learning these more technically difficult
Oh.
classical songs, and
Ah.
I'm like, dang it, man, there's so much to do in life. And like now I want to like I want to do web development, you know, so I want to learn HTML,
Oh,
CSS, and JavaScript. So,
dude.
yeah, I moved back to my dad's house just recently. So now I'm like doing way less. Like it kind of bums me out because I'm like too comfortable here. I think like, well,
Oh,
maybe I think it's my desk or something. There's just something about my room that's just like not promoting productivity the way I was at my mom's, where I could just literally whip out any journal, like my coding journal or my music theory journal, and just start working on it for 2 hours from 10 to 12.
No.
And I was doing that like every night. But here I get really like lazy for some reason. And it's just crazy how like habit and routine and your memories, everything really, and your actions of the past really start feeding in, like the frequency of those actions, everything starts feeding into like your mode of operation in an unconscious level. Like, you know, how you go about your day, the urges that come up, you know, everything is just all like, oh, I have this craving to play guitar all of a sudden. Oh, that's probably because I've been doing it for like every day for the past few years, or more often than not, it's a part of my daily routine. You have those impulses,
yeah.
you know, and yeah, it's like crazy, man. Like, I think it's really cool though to be aware of those things, because then you like, because it's exciting, because though you might find initially like, wow, I'm not where I want to be in my routine in my day life, I'm also in control and I can take steps towards that. You know, you might not be able to do it all changed at once, but you can definitely achieve something in the right direction or the direction that you would want to go in.
Mm.
Yeah.
Like, it's interesting to think too, like, how much can we actually change in life, you know?
How much can we actually change?
Yeah, because, you know, like, if you think about who you are now, like, how much of that can actually, like, change to, like, extreme degrees? And, like, how much are you capable of, like, sustaining that for a longer period of time, and actually maybe even further ingraining that into becoming who you are, and to a point that people don't even recognize who you are anymore, personality wise.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Like sometimes I think this kind of just ties into being selfish, you know, like, because I've been passive a lot of my life, so I'll come across a lot of moments where I'm like, dang, I just need to focus on myself, or I just need to stand up for myself, or choose what's best for me. You know, it doesn't matter what they think. If I do what's best for me, I'm going to be happy at the end of the day, and that's going to help me be a better like son. It's going to help me be a better like friend, coworker, or employee, or student even. And if I don't focus on those things that's best for me to help me be the best for all the other relationships in my life that matter to me, then yeah, everything starts suffering, and I ultimately start suffering, you know? So there are moments where we have to focus on ourselves more selfishly. So it's like a basic level of thinking of it, where if I were to change who I am from a passive to a more actively expressive or selfish person, where I'm going to actively say like, hey, I can't hang out today. No, I'm not down for that. Or, hey, I'm sorry, I can't be your friend anymore because this is not the lifestyle I'm trying to live. I want to do other things, and this is the life I'm really trying to live. So, because all of that really does pivot upon your choice of who you allow into your life and who you allow to hang out with you.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Yeah, I
that
think
is
like
true.
our friends, the top 5 people you hang out with most, like, define you. And, you know, if you hang out with a lot of people who think and do certain things, like, it's more likely that you're going to feel the urge or impulse to do those things as well, just to belong or fit in, or because that's what they do, you know? So if you're going to hang out with them, it's going to be pretty disconnected to not do what they're doing, I guess.
Yeah. That is true. I've definitely noticed that at certain points in my life.
Yeah. It's kind of a tough battle too, especially if you, like, for me in my situation, I feel like I grew up with a bunch of friends that in high school that were skaters, and yeah, eventually I had to quit skateboarding. Well, it's not that I quit, but I had to cut back on it for school, and then also like for guitar, because I don't want to get hurt and not be able to play. And so that can hurt your relationship with people, you know, because it's like our relationship's founded upon skating or something like that, and yeah, it just kind of becomes a conflict of interest. Everybody wants to go skate, but you want to play guitar, and then it's like, oh well. And then I found myself in a position where I'm just all by myself, trying to practice, and that was kind of lonely, and
Yeah.
it doesn't feel good to be in that situation, even if you are choosing yourself, you know, which kind of, it can be very tough. I know there's probably a lot of people who are in those situations in life where they find themselves by themselves and not really belonging anywhere or having any real friend groups. But yeah, I think it's probably a good time to start wrapping things up.
Oh, no. Yeah.
I don't mean to be the one to initiate that. I just, it's been a few hours, and I think I might want to relax and just maybe eat something.
Yeah, no worries, Lawrence. I think I'm in the same boat as well.
Cool.
We covered some really good stuff.
Yeah, today was a good talk, and sorry if I like talk too much, because I don't like to talk too much, you know, like I like everybody to be able to feel like they can get their thoughts out too, like but no, really, thank you though, you guys, for having me on. And
yeah, well, you're our guest speaker, so there's nothing wrong with you doing most of the talking, so we're glad to have you on.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, Lawrence.
Yeah, it's good to talk with you, Logan, Andy, and Adam.
Yeah.
You guys are awesome, man. Yeah, dude.
We gotta hang out sometime outside of around the bonfire.
Yeah, totally. And we're about to kickstart that marketing team for Shia.
Oh yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
We're forging ahead, man. We're gonna have our peanut butter falcon. You know,
Shia.
I mean, Logan, it's okay. We understand if you don't want to be involved in that one, but definitely the loofah
Shia
and
butter.
the Shia butter. You know.
Yeah.
Oh my god,
Dude.
made in France. Oh, that's just gonna legitimize it. Oh,
Dude, yeah, Shia
there
butter.
we
That's good.
dude. It'll be like le butter or something, or I don't know. But anyways, you guys, yeah.
All right,
Rock
well
and
then,
roll.
to our listeners, thank you for joining us around the bonfire. It's been a warm night with my friends here, and to Lawrence, we've enjoyed having you and welcome you back around the fire whenever you walk by the fire. So whenever you feel like being warm, just join us by
Stop
the fire.
on by.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right.
Man.
Well,
Thank you guys.
I'll stop.
Thank you again.
All right.
Yeah. Good night.
Good night.